I'm so thankful and humbled that you all decided to come and spend some time with us. Some of you because you've been long-term partners and friends of this long journey that we've been on. Some of you because Sweet Autumn Barbecue brought some food. So whatever it is, appreciate you being here and spending a few moments with us. 17 years ago, we started this journey. It's odd to think, I feel like I'm still 17 sometimes, so I don't know how 17 years ago we started this journey, but a mentor of mine started this trek, a man named Kurt Solano, and we did this thing called Church on the Street, and Church on the Street was a good descriptor of what we were up to. We would come down from the suburbs, and we would come down into the city and hand out some food to the homeless, and we would sing songs and preach sermons and talk about Jesus and the salvation that He brings, and then we would pack up our things and we would head back to the suburbs and wait to come back next week. Kurt brought me in early in that process, and it wasn't long before I started to have an unease about what we're up to. I couldn't name it. There was just an unease, and more schooling helped to put some pieces together, but it still wasn't quite there yet. So I left to do some more schooling. And during that time, I started to dig into what it is that maybe God is having us to do. That what is it? Is it enough to just get people to say Jesus and then leave them and our lives never really come together? And I started to think and write and process this, and I landed on this phrase that our team will hear over and over and over again, and of course we've heard it all throughout Scripture, but that if Jesus is here to reconcile us, if God is in the world reconciling us to one another through Christ, and now giving us the ministry of reconciliation, that must have something to do with lives being joined together. That it's not something done from a distance, but it's something that's done real close. And in that closeness, Jesus enters in, and out of that closeness, out of that joining, He creates something new out of it. The new humanity. And it begins to transform not only my relationship and your relationship, but it begins to transform the world that we're a part of as well. So I came back, I was asked to come back 8 years ago to be the executive director of this thing called Church on the Street. And I told the board, the organization had gone through a tumultuous time, and Church on the Street was in real trouble. And so I came and I said, if you let me begin to implement some of these things that I've been writing on, then I'll come back. And they said, well, what else? So they took a chance on bringing me back in, and we started this journey together. So 8 years ago, we started moving away from what we now call drive-by ministry towards this thing called reconciliation. Towards this thing that joins lives together and creates something new. So one phrase that we're fond of at REMERGE is that reconciliation isn't this distant sort of thing, but it's somehow us joining together. And in that joining together, I don't become like you and you don't become like me, but somehow God creates something new out of both of us. So if my ministry is about getting you to be like me, I'm already setting off on the wrong foot. So we started that journey 8 years ago, and it became obvious that Church on the Street really didn't describe what we were up to. We weren't trying to create another little congregation of people that primarily made up of homeless folks. We were trying to do something bigger than that. So whenever we would introduce ourselves to someone else and say, hey, we're with Church on the Street, they would go, oh, you're a homeless ministry. No. Or they would go, oh, when does your congregation meet? Can I come and worship with you? Well, that's not really what we're doing. So the Lord started to move us, not just practically in a different direction, but started to move us strategically and organizationally in a different direction as well. And we said, let's get down to the basics. What is it that we're about, and how do we build something around that simple message? That God is joining lives together and creating something new out of it. How do we create something around that simple message? So we came up with, ultimately, a two-word strategy. Only reconciliation. That's it. Only reconciliation. That is the core. Now we've, done all the work and filled out all the stuff, and we've got, this great plan. But it boils down to two words. Only reconciliation. If it isn't bringing lives together, if it isn't joining people together, if I'm not entering into your suffering and into your joy, and you're not entering into mine, then we don't want to be about that. We want to be about something that joins us together and creates something new. Only reconciliation. So for us, that message has to have some integrity to it. So we decided we want to continue this grassroots work, this hands-on doing of reconciliation. So as part of a brand, you got to come up with a cool name for it. So REMERGE is a way of saying reconciliation, that we are torn apart from one another, but God is re-merging us together. But if we're going to be about the grassroots things, let's call that reconnect. Let's reconnect lives together. That's what we call the grassroots, the get your hands dirty work of REMERGE. We work in a community called South Atlanta. We work in a community called Central Atlanta. We do art, and I hope you've taken in some of the fantastic art that's been displayed back here by our team. And we do this thing called Giving Grace, where we try to intentionally connect people who are designed to be apart from one another. The rich and the poor, the black and the white, different socioeconomics. Let's be intentional about trying to create community in that space, to shrink the distance between the two. That's the grassroots. That's reconnect. Let's reconnect lives together. And as we have been reconnecting lives together, we learn things. You do things and you learn things. Often you learn how horrible you are at it. And we've certainly learned that. But you also learn some lessons along the way. That was horrible, so maybe we should think this way instead. So we've learned some valuable lessons, and we've started to put that together. And because we're so passionate about this thing called reconciliation or re-merging our lives together, then we want to share that with people. We want to share those stories with people. And we call that rethink. We want to rethink this thing, right? Scripture tells us to renew our minds. We want to think differently about the way that the world functions. And so we just want to share what we've been learning and reconnecting lives together. The ways that we have separated ourselves from one another. The ways that systems separate us from one another. The ways that built environments separate us from one another. The ways that our idolatries to certain belief systems separate us from one another. We want to rethink those things and share those with other people. Not because we've got all the right answers, but we want to engage in that conversation and have others engage back with us so we can continue to rethink. One valuable lesson that we've learned along this path is that rethinking isn't nearly good enough. I am way overeducated. I have thought a lot about Jesus and Bible and theology and development. And I got fancy degrees. But I am... Sometimes knowing a lot of stuff doesn't translate into being different. So we've been about reconnecting and then about sharing those stories and helping to rethink things. But one thing that we learned from that was that people would go with this knowledge and think, yes, this is fantastic. And then they would go back home and go, boy, I wonder what that would look like here. So we said, well, we don't just need to reconnect people. We don't just need to help people rethink. We need to help people reimagine. What could your neighborhood look like if the things that Jesus says is true? If He is truly connecting us to one another, reconciling us to one another, what could that look like? It's not not enough to just think about it. You have to see it differently. You have to begin to create an imagination around what's possible and what could be but isn't yet. So we've started this third unit, division, that we call reimagine. And what we want to do is walk along people, again, not because we've got the answers. I don't know what the answer is in someone else's community, but we can help you to develop that imagination and walk alongside of you. We've got different tools and things that we can use for that and different stories, but we've got a lot of creative people who can help you to rethink and to reimagine what your community, what your organization, what your nonprofit, what your business, what your city could look like. So I've been struck today, to be candid with you, I've been struck today that as we have relaunched this thing called Church on the Street into something called REMERGE, that there's been some questioning as to what that's about. I've been struck by that today, just to be candid with you. Shocked. Church on the Street doesn't describe what I just described to you. It's that simple. We're not trying to create another little community on the street that can identify itself apart from everyone else. We're trying to do the opposite of that. To bring everybody to the table. To imagine a world where that is possible. Not so that you become like me or I become like you, but so that He can create a new humanity out of both of us. Something new and different. And we'll only enter into that journey, enter into that discipleship, if we can begin to imagine that it's possible. That we don't just have to settle for what is because there can be something else. That's what REMERGE is all about. Only reconciliation. Only reconciliation. Not good programs. Not good preaching. Not good programming and curriculum, but reconciliation. Reconciliation. Joining lives together. So I'm glad that you all are here. There are plenty of faces that I hadn't seen before or didn't recognize. And it's an opportunity for us to join together, to learn to be friends. We might not be buddies and go and hang out in the corner, but we can be friends. We can suffer with one another. We can celebrate with one another. We can enter into life with one another. That's what REMERGE is about. And I'm so thankful that you all are here to help us celebrate this long journey to get to this point. We are so excited about tomorrow, and that this night is over. And that we're done. Tomorrow is the beginning of a new day, a continuation of one story, but a new day in that story. So thank you all for celebrating with us and being here. Pastor Felicia, who serves on our board of directors, is going to come and she's just going to ask God's blessing over us, but over REMERGE and the work that we're up to, and hopefully the ways in which our lives can be merged together as well. So welcome, Pastor Felicia.